now that we've gotten our drink delivery to the speaker panel of speakers, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Want to try to make sure everyone gets out of here not too far beyond the advertised ending time. I'm Ellen Zagura. I'm a professor in the School of Computer Science at Georgia Tech. I've been at Georgia Tech for more than 20 years and have to confess this is the first time I've been to Augusta. My husband's a golfer, so it's not, he's been here before, but it's my first time, so I'm pleased to be here with all of you. This is the panel in which, if you were here in the last session and heard, you know, there's a lot of, that was about credentialing an institution with respect to its programs. Now we're going to talk about the programs, building the various kinds of programs that can lead to that kind of credentialing. And we've got a great group of panelists here representing across quite a diversity of both types of institutions of higher education and also types of programs. So I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves. They'll do a better job than I would, except for one thing. I'm going to say each of their names, and I'm going to start with Lieutenant Colonel Michael, who has given me a guidance to the pronunciation of his last name that's really wonderful. The guidance is, know what? Cows ski. So, know what? Cows ski. So, Lieutenant Colonel Michael, that's a little casual, isn't it? But take it away.
All right, thank you. And again, thank you to Georgia Regents University for inviting us down here to speak. It was a great honor. I'm here on behalf of our director, Colonel Greg Conti from the Army Cyber Institute at West Point. We're a new organization that was just started about 2 years ago. Our primary missions are outreach, advise, educate, and research. And where we came from is from the Cyber Research Center inside the Department of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science. And as a program, we've been teaching, it wasn't called then, but been teaching cyber skills to our cadets since about 1999. So we've had a formal program. We were one of the first, if not the first, Center for Academic Excellence that NSA granted back in 2002, and then we've since been revalidated for that program. So we take kind of a two-track approach at West Point for our program. The first track is what we give to every single cadet that goes through the academy. They get an initial course in basically the proper use of their computer. You would think that everyone growing up now grew up touching a computer since the probably time they could walk, but they don't necessarily know how to do that properly in respect as being a good citizen on the network. So that's really what the first fundamental class we teach is, how to use the computer as a responsible user. Later on in their third year, they get a little bit more advanced course where they take some basic networking courses and some basic programming. So that's all of the 1,000 to 1,200 cadets a year that go through will get that training. Total population on campus is about 4,400. We also have a specific track for our computer science majors and our more technology majors that go through a series of courses that culminates in a computer defense exercise that's sponsored by the NSA, where all of the service academies compete against each other, basically against the NSA Red Team. West Point has won over half of those competitions. They've been going on for about the past 10 years. We won this past year. We were very excited about that. Our football team may not be able to beat Navy, but our computer defense exercise team beats Navy just about every year. So we're very excited about that. One of the highlights of our program, though, is not what happens in the classroom, it's what happens outside of the classroom. So we bring in speakers from around the community, call them hackers, call them research scientists, call them what you will. These are key leaders in wireless technologies, forensics, network protocols. we bring them in and have them talk to the cadets both during class time, and we bring them in on weekends sometimes as well to do a hands-on lab with them. And we think that that's really where you're going to develop the intensity and the passion for this topic is outside of the classroom by bringing in these experts, getting the cadets out to venues, ShmooCon, Black Hat, DEF CON, where they can be exposed to the current technologies and kind of see that the personalities and gain a relationship with those organizations and those folks outside of the classroom. And that's really where we see the benefit of the program, not just in the classroom where they learn the technical side of it, but outside of the classroom where they learn some of the practical hands-on part of that. And I think I'll
Thank you.
pass it.
Greg?
Excuse me. Good afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and thank Georgia Regents University also for the opportunity to come and talk to you folks today. I'm Greg White. I'm the director for the Center for Infrastructure Assurance and Security at the University of Texas at San Antonio. I'm also a professor in the computer science department, also retired military, having served 30 years between active duty and reserves. And after thanks to things like 9/11, I spent over 22 years on active duty total, so now retired and enjoying myself. Interestingly enough, I think that Augusta is where San Antonio was back around 2000. For those of you who don't know anything about San Antonio, we're the home of the Air Force's Cyber Command, the 24th Air Force. But before it was there, back for a number of years, since basically in 1986, the Air Force moved the Air Force's Computer Security Office to San Antonio, where the Electronic Security Command was, where their ComSec and their Tempest mission lay at that time as well. So they combined all the electronic security missions together, very much like NSA has them all in the same location. The Air Force did that, but that was back in 1986. Later, they created the Air Force Information Warfare Center in San Antonio. They created the 67th Information Operations Wing, which is in San Antonio. And so we had this hub of cybersecurity in the Air Force that's been there since the mid-'80s, really started growing in the '90s. And as a result of that, there is quite a bit of an industry that popped up in San Antonio to support that. We had a lot of defense contractors come in, but what we also saw was a number of folks that would be in the military for a few years, they would get out and form their own little security companies. So we have a lot of startup security companies in the San Antonio area. What happened then in the late '90s and about the year 2000 was the community. The reason that we have a program at the University of Texas at San Antonio, and actually we have several other centers of academic, we got our Center of Academic Excellence designation in 2003, if I recall correctly, so not too far behind. The first one in the state of Texas, but now San Antonio has three in that community. We have three universities that have a Center of Academic Excellence designation. And it wasn't academia that got this thing started. It was actually a community effort. It was actually a group of community individuals coming together and approaching the various universities and saying, hey, we've got this need. We need cybersecurity professionals, and you folks aren't producing it. We're not getting them out of those universities. Are you going to do something about that? We need you to do something about that. And San Antonio was the first, UT San Antonio was the first one to step up and said, okay, we'll start a program. And we started a program at the university. Actually, I was not at the university at that time. It was as a result of that effort I got hired. I had been teaching at the Air Force Academy and separated and got it. And was down there working for one of those security companies, and they needed someone to come and teach. I started teaching as an adjunct, and then they pulled me in as a full-time professor to help them to build that cybersecurity program, because I had done that at the Air Force Academy a number of years ago. So that's what really pushed the program and what happened in the area. And we've learned there's a lot of things that we have learned since then, but it really was the community going to the university that got things going. And you needed that. If I want one piece of advice for the city of Augusta, you need a champion. If you want the thing to grow, you need a champion in the community who's willing to take, because if you've ever dealt with academia moves at glacial paces, and it's hard to get things going. So you need some diehard individual in the community that's not going to take no for an answer and will keep pushing things until the university's finally come along. And we learned a lot about different things in the high school programs and all sorts of other things that we got going. We run the National Collegiate Cyber Defense Competition, which is the largest collegiate competition at this point. It's basically patterned after the Service Academy competition that was mentioned. We were also one of the co-founders for the Cyber Patriot program. That is an extremely important program and will do wonders to get things going in your community. We have got 100 different high school and middle school teams from the San Antonio area itself, including a number of girls, all girl teams. So that program is a wonderful thing if you want to kickstart stuff and get it going. And then that feeding into the colleges, we're now taking advantage of all those Cyber Patriot schools, all those people that have got an interest in cybersecurity, and now we're dragging them into the college as well. So we've learned a lot. Anyway, I've taken up, I think, way past my time, but
Perfect.
it's an interesting endeavor, and I wish Augusta a lot of luck. And if there's anything we can do, let us know. We've got a lot of lessons that we have learned, and there's no reason to reinvent the wheel.
Thank you. Bill?
Hi, my name is Bill Dorland. I'm a physics professor at the University of Maryland in College Park, and I know nothing about cybersecurity. I have worked in things called nuclear forensics, which is, and I'm an expert, I guess, on thermonuclear deuterium-tritium reactions, which has certain uses in the world. And so I've been part of how do you keep and maintain secrets and understand what the other side is doing. And so when our campus moved towards getting involved in cybersecurity, I was brought in. So I want to tell you a little bit about the University of Maryland and its posture towards cybersecurity, and then how we do it on our campus. And then if depending on how the questions go, since you may actually want most of what these guys have to offer rather than what I have to offer. So I'm going to try to keep this short. The University of Maryland is a Tier 1 research university with a STEM focus. So we have a lot of students over many years who've come to the university for STEM degrees, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And if you look at computer science, economics and business, engineering, natural science, mathematics, physics, and social sciences, of course, I've just described the central areas for cybersecurity. It's also the case that in those areas, there are only 6 universities in the world which are top 25 in all of those areas. And you could name 5 and you would not have guessed Maryland is the 6th, right? So the 5 are Berkeley, Stanford, Michigan, MIT, Princeton, and Maryland at College Park. So we're a great place for this kind of integrated look at cybersecurity and getting students who would be terrific to bring into the program. So what we do at the University of Maryland to try to attract students is we have a unit called the Honors College. This is a recruitment tool, frankly, but it's also an educational unit. And the way it works is we recruit a full quarter of the incoming class, so it's not a small program. There are thousands of students in this thing. And they are focused into areas that they're interested in that are not their majors. So cybersecurity was a terrific element to pop into this, right? So we had an honors college for several years, and when the idea came up to get the university more visible and more active in the area of cybersecurity, the way we did it was to set up an honors living learning program. So we're already recruiting the best students that we can get, and their average SATs on each section would be 720 to 730 out of 800. So good students, and then we try to match them up with their interest in cybersecurity. To fund it, we got a corporate partner. Northrop Grumman Corporation is our primary partner. They gave us $1 million to start, and we're negotiating with them for how to continue. We also have other partners, Parsons Engineering, and then partners who don't contribute money but contribute very important things. Being in Washington, D.C., we have rather deep relationships with NSA, some arms of the NSA called CASTLE, Center for the Advanced Study of Language, the Laboratory for Telecommunication Systems, the Laboratory for Physical Science. These are all essentially on campus and declassified parts of the NSA's operations, I guess. So we've tied into all those things. The posture of University of Maryland has not been a West Point or the home of a cyber command. What we have been in computer science and in cybersecurity type areas is the commercial side. So our alums, I looked up just now while I was sitting here, our alums, founder of Google, Kayak, Orbitz, Oculus Rift, a lot of Pixar people, the guy who runs Yahoo Research Labs, and there's some others. So our focus, our problem, if you like, in cybersecurity is we get students might be interested in this and they go off to make lots of money in the commercial world. And so our task, the way we see what we're trying to do, is to pull those students into careers in public service and careers in commerce and in industry and R&D in the area of cybersecurity because it's a national priority. So that's what we're trying to do.
I'm going to get us started with some questions to the panel, but we're also hoping to have a fairly open and robust set of involvement from the audience. So while I'm getting them warmed up or getting you warmed up, please be thinking about participating and going to one of the two microphones. So these are really three quite different kinds of universities, education settings. But I think all probably share that there's really competition for student attention and student interest. There's so many opportunities available now, and cybersecurity is one that can compete well, but can't take it for granted that students are going to find that compelling and interesting. So I was wondering if any of you, or even all of you, might speak to the kinds of things you've done in terms of attracting students, and who you see as your typical student, who you see as the kind of student you'd like to pull in, but maybe have to work a little harder to bring that student in.
You go first? Okay, sure. I guess I'll go ahead and go first. UT San Antonio, if we're talking at the undergraduate level, primarily the students that we get are from the southwest area. And in fact, obviously San Antonio is where we get most of our students from, the largest number of students from. And then interestingly enough, the second largest is from Harris County, which is Houston. So we get them from that South Texas area. And UT San Antonio itself as a community is a Hispanic community. UT San Antonio is a Hispanic serving institution, so we have over 50% of our student body is from that underrepresented group, which is something that's important to the government, to making sure that we have more individuals from that. Now, interestingly enough, what's been really hard and a challenge is to get them to come into a security program. Most of the students, you take a look at the demographics in San Antonio and where all the high schools are with the largest Hispanic population, a lot of those are Title I schools that where the students are not used to going to college. Very large percentage of the students at UT San Antonio are first-generation college students, which presents a challenge in itself. So for us to be able to convince folks to come is a challenge. Then to convince them to come and to do something that's technical is another challenge. So what has been really important for us is to get out into the community. At an earlier age. We can't wait for them to start applying to college when they think about that, because a lot of them wouldn't have thought about that. They would be going into the services in the tourism industry, which is what the two largest things in San Antonio are. So if we want to get them interested in doing something in cyber, we've got to hit them earlier, and that's where that, like we mentioned, that Cyber Patriot program comes in. We have got a large number of high schools. I've got, for example, in 2 weeks, I've got a group of 77 high school juniors and seniors from one school in that demographic area that's coming in just to talk to us about our cybersecurity program. They want to know what the program's like and to talk to some students and see what it's like. So it's getting out, working with the community, working with the high school teachers, getting to them, letting them know what's available, letting them know what scholarships are available for these individuals. That's very important in this group as well. What kind of financial assistance? Some of them will not be able to afford to go to the 4-year right away, but they could go to a 2-year. So forging relationships with the 2-year programs in the community as well. So all of this plays into, bottom line, can't wait for them to get to the university to think about the program. We've got to start hitting them up at junior high and high school because of the demographics and because what they're used to. If we want those folks represented in the federal government, we got to reach out a lot earlier.
Bill?
Thanks. So the outreach part that we do with more effort than otherwise is to women. This is a technical area. We have a lot of majors, so I forgot to say, we've only been at this for 2 years. So we have 2 cohorts of students, 112 students. So I have very much less experience at the University of Maryland and then personally than the others on the panel. But in our first 2 years, we have 112 students, and 25% are women, which is higher than the percentage of women in the engineering and CM&S degree, college, computer science degrees that we have at our university. So we're making an effort there. We do that with things which haven't paid off yet, but which we're doing. So we run Cyber Patriot challenges. We have middle school girls coming to campus every 3 or 4 weeks to compete and to participate in cybersecurity kinds of activities on campus. We have summer programs for college students to try to get them to think about careers in cybersecurity, REUs of various kinds, research education for undergraduates. Is that what that is? Yeah.
Research experience.
Experience, thank you. I knew that was wrong, but somehow that came out. So, but the main way we reach out to folks is through scholarships. So right now we're giving to the students in cybersecurity in the honors program, we're giving out about $1.2 million a year. So we're trying to jumpstart it and make it clearly attractive, and we're preferencing as one can in both women and underrepresented minorities.
So West Point draws from all over the United States for its student body, and it's selective to get into the school so that the students that we have are very highly motivated. But one thing that kind of drives them is they've got to be interested in what it is they're doing. And that's probably not unique to West Point. I imagine all schools are like that the cadets are going to do what they're most interested in. So again, the way that we try to approach that is by some of these out-of-class activities. We have a few clubs that are set up for the cadets to participate in on weekends or in the evenings that kind of allow them to learn from each other, and again, to bring in these experts from the outside to help them develop their skills and kind of satisfy their curiosity. A lot of the programs are not necessarily formal programs. They just get together as a group. One is our Electronic Experimenters Club. They get together. We're able to provide them with hardware and lab facilities so that they can go in and play with robots, for instance, or work on really any project that they want. It's not for a grade. It's not for a specific purpose other than to allow them to be creative and satisfy their curiosity. So through that, we're able to pull in some of the folks, and then through those clubs, introduce them to some of the more technical aspects and get them lined up with the education side of the program. So,
can I add one thing?
I'm sorry?
Can I add one thing?
Please.
I just remembered another thing. If you want to get folks interested at the high school level, one of the things we did, we had a couple years ago, the winning Cyber Patriot national champion came from San Antonio. And at one of the principals in our local area, the one for the high school, what she did was she basically called an assembly for the entire student body and then presented the winning, those students from that cyber security competition, that competitive team, had introduced them. I mean, we're talking with the cheerleaders out there and doing little cheerleaders, and the students had to come through the line of cheerleaders as they were cheering. And I guarantee absolutely that this was the first time for some of them to ever have cheerleaders cheering for them. But she made a big thing out of it. She made sure they got Letterman jackets as well. And the impact that had on not just those students, but the rest of the student body just cannot be I cannot overstate what that has done for that school and for the importance of that program and how those people see this whole cybersecurity field.
I'm going to open things up to see if we have interest in the audience in asking panelists a question. And if you could say your name and organization you're with, please.
Sure. Hi, my name is Dean Shavink. I'm with the United States Navy. One of my questions is a few years ago, a company called D-Wave came up with one of the first commercially based quantum computing. What are a lot of the educations coming up with for developing cybersecurity, defense, and everything, with the realization that with quantum computing comes up a whole new other world of stuff? So is there any initiatives right now? I know personally with the Cyber Patriot program, I'd just definitely like to make a plug for that. I agree. I've actually been a mentor on one of those programs. I think it is great. I think it's fantastic, especially seeing a lot of these. I did it with a JROTC group in Hawaii, and seeing their faces when they do something or learn something and seeing their eyes light up, it's a pretty awesome thing. And the fact that we're pushing this out more to a lot of the junior high schoolers, middle school, and even now into the elementary, I think is one of the greatest things, because being a military person, one of the things that I've noticed is we're getting a lot of personnel who go from high school with no background in cybersecurity, and then they go through a program called JCAC, and they get this information fire hose down their throat, and it's basically learn for this exam, then dump. Learn for this next exam, then dump. And they're not learning a lot of that critical thinking process and a lot of that foundational basis that I think comes from the education in college, high school, and middle school. Sorry for the accidental little extra plug.
Great. So just to generalize the question slightly, I'd say, in what ways are cybersecurity education programs changing because the landscape is changing or because the students are changing? And with the specific example of quantum.
Yes, thank you so much.
Of course.
Well, so I'll take the quantum part. We have a D-Wave computer, and we have the opportunity to let the students try to think about what they would do with it. But the truth is that kind of technology is still rather distant from being directly relevant. The challenge is, of course, part of what you're describing is the interdisciplinarity of the whole thing. There's hardware changes that are coming. There are software changes. And so I don't know that we have the right answer, but in talking to everybody today, I feel like a good part of the answer is you want a resilient program that can handle different kinds of advances and train students. So we have computer engineering, where we have students studying the kinds of technological changes. We have students in something called the study in the Consortium for the Study of Terrorism and Responses to Terrorism, which is a campus group in the social sciences, who are trying to figure out, why do people do these things and how do they do those things. We have business professors, computer science, and so forth. And I think the interdisciplinary approach is something that helps students feel confident that whatever they're learning won't be just upended someday by the technology. And so that's part of how we deal with that.
Definitely. Cool.
I agree in terms of the quantum. It kind of reminded me, though, the basic question. Way back when I was teaching at the Air Force Academy, all the professors are on the 6th floor, and I remember getting in the elevator one day and going up in the elevator, and there was a couple of my colleagues from the history department that were sitting there talking about, oh yeah, I've got to do history 101 again this semester. I'm going to have to pull the slides off the shelf, dust them off, and do it again. And I was thinking, boy, what would that be like? And I have never taught the same class in computer science, especially computer security, twice, because it's constantly changing. And if I were to go back and take a look at the courses that I developed back in the mid-90s, what would they look like in comparison to today? You go back 5 years, and how much were we involved with this? And now we can't, we have to be talking about mobile or cloud or whatever it is it's constantly changing. So you just have to your program has to be ready to adapt to whatever the next technology is going to be.
Definitely. Thanks.
Well, a couple of programs that we have are a capstone design exercise where the cadets form multidisciplinary teams, so that the EEs are working with the CS or working with the systems engineers, working with mechanical engineers, depending on the project, and they spend an entire year working on a project that's not anything that they've learned about in class. They're having to learn this kind of on their own, and sometimes they have corporate sponsors that are maybe looking for the cadets to come up with a solution to a problem for them. So that's one way that we have them work on something outside of the class beyond what they're normally going to learn. And sometimes we can incorporate some of that into the class depending on what it is. And another program that we have is what we call our AIED program, the Academic Individual Advanced Development. It's basically a summer internship program, if you will. But normally the cadets have a very, very busy summer schedule. So it's not your typical internship. It only lasts about 3 weeks. But we are able to send them to places like MIT Lincoln Lab or Disney or FireEye, Boeing, as well as to government agencies. We send some cadets to the NSA for 3 weeks. They go through the full, getting the clearance, doing the poly, and they go work side by side with an NSA analyst for 3 weeks. So that's another way that we allow the cadets to see what's new in technology by sending them out to industry, by sending them out to these research agencies, and have them see what people are working on right now. And then they can bring that back to the classroom for us.
Another question.
Carol Jardina, I'm with Georgia Regents with the Office of Military and Veterans Services. I had a question for Dr. White. You mentioned that industry pushed University of Texas and San Antonio to develop a cybersecurity program. Did they throw any money at the program? I mean, did they help you financially? We have some companies in this area that have provided some STEM scholarships for students, but what about, helping to build a department?
Well, to be quite honest, no. Industry did not support the university in terms of with lots of financial support to build a department, to hire new professors or anything along that line. We were able to go to the state and get some help from the state with some emerging technology funds. Texas has a special, well, to be quite honest, what it is funding that allows us to go steal professors from other universities. As long as they, quite literally, that's what it is. But the rules are you can't steal from another Texas university. It has to be from outside the state of Texas. I kid you not. So we were able to get some funds like that. And then we have some organizations, there are some entities within the community that have helped a lot. The Armed Forces Communications and Electronic Association, they have SIA chapters, things like that, ISSA, ISACA, some of these local chapters have provided a lot of funds and support for the students, mostly in the terms of scholarships or helping out the teams or some other things like that, and things that have allowed us to attract students, but it wasn't directly for building the program as such. That said, we have received some minor funds. A lot of those startups, the smaller startups, are oftentimes easier. You get them to whip out the checkbook faster. It's just they don't write very big checks.
Anybody else have any experience with that?
At Georgia Tech in the School of Computer Science, we have a College of Computing and Industrial Affiliates program. And the participants in that are largely companies of many sizes, but who are just desperate for the graduates of the program. And as you build programs and build a base of employers, that may be a place to look. So it's a little chicken and egg, because you may need to be closer to graduating students before you could tap them in quite the same kind of way. But employers who are eager for the graduates should also be eager to have the program grow and succeed.
I have a brief thought. There's a moment in these kinds of transitions where there's a splash. Perhaps this is a part of the GRU splash that we're in here today, where the leadership of the university is paying attention and understands that this is a new direction. Those are moments that can't be lost, and you can capitalize on a moment like this for a week or two, get in the president or the provost's office and say, we've made some promises, we've got some opportunities, I need this much support staff or a professorship or a line or whatever it is. We did that. The things you get don't seem like much, a coordinator for a program, but that's actually what makes it all kind of possible. Mm-hmm. And I feel like the window for that is very narrow. These are big, you had some fantastic people here today, so try to grab that now.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Andrea Nonweiler, and I work for Department of Defense in cyber education. And my question is, and this is slightly selfish in scope, but I'm actually seeking out graduate programs, and I'm actually a University of Maryland, UMUC alum in cybersecurity. But I'm actually having completed a program online and found that there are challenges, especially in the technical realm, of being on a strictly online program, not having that lab experience, et cetera. If someone wishes to seek out a graduate program, how are universities looking to develop it for those who need to complete their graduate degree online and overcome some of those obstacles such as computer labs, red team, blue team, the hands-on aspects of computers and computer science?
You guys have the answer?
I-
There was a previous speaker
Yeah.
from Mississippi State in the previous session who talked a little bit about the opportunities there, and I don't see him in the room. But he's still here, I'll bet you, because he drove over today. And he was describing that there are certain, like the University of Alaska at Fairbanks has servers around the country available for people who are in graduate programs to do red team, blue team exercises. And then various universities are starting online programs of various kinds. I know one of the ideas I got at lunch was precisely this direction, but I don't know who the winners are right now. I don't know where the sweet spot is.
I wasn't going to plug this quite so visibly, but because you asked, I'm going to. All right, so I have a bunch of flyers. This is for the Georgia Tech Online Master's Degree in Computer Science. So it's not specialized to information security or cybersecurity, but there will be course offerings there that allow some concentration in that area. It's a steal. I can't believe that we are giving away our education program at this kind of a cost. So I'll leave some of these up here. I have not taught in it myself, but I have close colleagues who are some of our absolutely very best faculty who are teaching those classes. And it's on the Udacity platform. So.
Coming at this from a little different angle, Ned Keeler from the Cyber Center of Excellence. And I want to draw on something Admiral Rogers said this morning first. And he was talking about the cyber professionals. They're not only a trained solution. He talked about them having to be motivated as well as trained. And then he talked about some specific pieces of the puzzle, and he called it aptitude. And then within that construct, I think he mentioned creativity, curiosity, and persistence. I guess the question is, within that construct, outside of the education curriculum, do you have any filter that finds those kind of students that make the real professional cyber individual? And just to play to the West Point gentleman for a moment, that's what we're looking for. You know, as we put these soldiers into the training, we want to get the one that really cares about it and wants to be involved in it, and by the way, stay with it. If we make that big investment in them, we want to keep them. So I'm wondering if the colleges have any filtering mechanism to look for that, not just the good student, but the student that's going to make a good professional and stay with it. And by the way, we are looking for a mechanism to sort of filter out and find those people ourselves. Is there a test? Is there some sort of instrument you can do that finds the kind of people that align with cyber?
So at the Academy, we have a couple different programs, and they're primarily self-selective. So we haven't quite cracked the nut on, how to give. Right now, the Army gives language aptitude tests to everybody, but we haven't cracked the nut on what the cyber aptitude test looks like yet. But the two programs that we have are the competitive cyber team, the cadet competitive cyber team that has 16 cadets on it from across all 4 years of the program, and they have to compete to get onto that team. So they have their own mechanisms in place for testing those cadets to try out for the team, and then they compete at the collegiate level in capture the flag type events. So that's one way, and we think that those guys that take time out of their own schedule to participate in that, to learn from each other, and to do these marathon, literally 48, 72-hour events, are showing this persistence, the aptitude, and the creativity, and those are the ones that again, they're self-selected at this point, but those are the ones that we're trying to feed to the Army. Recently, the Army decided that cyber was going to be a branch. So there's not a football branch, but there's a football team. But now there is a cyber branch, and there is a cyber team at West Point. So we're very excited about that, and that's the mechanism we're using to select these cadets. The other program that's in place is a little bit more formal process, is the Cyber Leader Development Program. West Point is a leader development institution. So we need to make sure that we're educating and giving the background to the cadets so that they can not only do some of these tasks themselves, but also lead soldiers that are doing these tasks. So it's not an individual sport. It's like Admiral Rogers mentioned this morning, it's a team sport. And so we're trying to develop the cadets on how to lead the soldiers as well. So we selected 6 of the top cadets in the cyber area last year to go into the cyber branch. In fact, Anthony Mendez is sitting in the back there. He's one of the first 6 that we selected. And this year we've been asked to select 15 of those. And it's expanding out into the ROTC program now. So the ROTC program is doing a similar talent search, if you will, to find cadets that have the demonstrated proclivity to go into the cyber branch.
Okay, we have two things come to mind real quick for UTSA. One is something very similar to what Mike said there, in that we have a computer security association that's a student club, and that's where our competitive teams come from. So we also utilize that, and it's not as a filter as such, but more as a method to attract students who are really interested in security and want to do more than just what they're doing in the classroom. As a matter of fact, I've got 2 teams that will be competing this Saturday in a competition that have come from that organization. So that's one of the things that we've done. Another thing that we've got going is and this is in the community as well, we've got an entrepreneur program at UT San Antonio, and we've got this thing called Geekdom that is in the community, which is designed as an incubator for basically small startup, high-tech kind of firms. And we try to make sure we got a strong relationship between these two, so that when we have students that hey, I've got a cool idea, what can I do with this? They've got people that they can go to and bounce ideas off of, and to potentially start putting things together and do some development. You get the whole idea, understand an incubator. So those are 2 programs that immediately jump to mind. One, I guess, caveat or caution I would then add is that not everybody who, just because you didn't participate in one of these 2 doesn't necessarily mean that you aren't motivated, aren't sharp, or whatever. We've got a number of students that, have to do something like, work to put themselves through school, and they don't have the opportunity, they don't have the time to go and do all these other extracurricular activities. And so, that's why I said it's not a filter, because there are some other very sharp people, but because there's circumstances the way they are for them, they don't have the opportunity to do some of these other things. So it's, it means that we have to watch out for those folks as well, and make sure that we do the introductions for them when we have people that are interested in who's your best cybersecurity person. Come talk to me.
So to add a slightly different perspective, so I wish I had the key. I wish I knew how to do it. And I've asked people here today twice that same question. At Maryland, we think of creativity, curiosity, and persistence. We really do. But we have a 4th category that we're trying to measure, and what I'm going to tell you we do, and that's talent. And so we have proxies for these things. And so, for example, for talent, wrongly or rightly, we look at their abilities in math and take that as some level of measure of sophistication in analytical thinking. The problem is, of course, we also have many students who don't have the opportunity to have had good training in mathematics. 10% of the students that make it through and are invited into honors at Maryland are first-generation students as well. So they're coming from terrible high schools where they haven't had that kind of training. So what do? We have this ridiculous operation where we have 50 faculty who take 8 weeks to read 12,000 files to try to figure out who to invite. And partly, to be completely honest, we do that because we were one of the schools back in the old days who was sued for selectively giving scholarships to African American students to try to change diversity. And so we can't look at a checkbox. We can't have any test result that plays directly into any admission decision into any program. So if we want to invite any student into anything, we have to do the full file review. So we do. The thing that I wish we had would be a standardized spatial awareness exam. I feel like a lot of information comes around that suggests students who do best in engineering that we haven't found through our reviews, which don't have access to this kind of metric, are students who really have the ability to envision three-dimensional things and figure out how they relate together. And I wish I knew how to measure that better. And then in terms of persistence and value of investment, you know, we're all putting in millions of dollars into these students. I'm honestly not worried about it. I do worry that we're training people who will then go off and work for Hollywood or in other areas because there's more money and more excitement there. But I think the mission here and the opportunities are so exciting that most of the people we pull in are going to stay. So I haven't worried about persistence in terms of persistence of staying in the community of cyber professionals yet. Maybe we're going to fail. That's my take.
Okay, any other questions from the audience? I think we're more or less at the advertised ending time, so unless any of the panelists would like to have a final word, which would be welcome if you'd like.
One last thing, in the education program, it's very important to instill a sense of ethics as you're teaching these topics to the students. Some of the techniques and programs that you're teaching, you know, they could go out and they could do some very bad things. So you have to tell them about the ethics part of it, but then you also have to give them a playground where they can go and try some of this stuff out. So that's the lab portion, giving them a protected network where they can go and try some of these things out. Because if you tell them about it, they're going to want to see it actually work. So that would be my last thing, is to always make sure that you incorporate the ethics into any education piece that you are doing.
Excellent.
I'll go ahead. One last thing. I would maybe word of advice, suggestion, whatever you want to call it here type thing is to get the community involved once again, internships. Get internships in the program. If you want to get people interested in cybersecurity, interns. And I'm not talking about just college interns. One of the more successful things that we had happen down in San Antonio was the 24th Air Force. That team that I mentioned that won the Nationals, the Air Force basically gave them an intern, you know, paid intern, worried about the clearances, a whole kit and caboodle, and got them in the 24/7 operations center and gave those high school students an opportunity to see what's going on real world, day-to-day basis, 24/7 in the Air Force. And you can imagine how excited